Medicare is not going to come in and negotiate every drug price. It's limited to a relatively few high-cost drugs. You target things that will make the greatest difference. And it's expected to save Medicare more than $100 billion over 10 years. So figure $10 billion a year. It's incredible cost savings. And if you figure the things that drive the budget deficit that some of us are concerned about are Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, this is a big step forward for Medicare. We got a 51-49 Senate with Ralph Warnock's victory. It's now a 50-49 Senate, with Kyrsten Sinema being the third independent to join Angus King and Bernie Sanders. She says she's not going to caucus with the Republicans. She probably won't caucus with us either, but apparently she never came to the caucus meetings anyway, so might not be that big a difference. The inside story, well, I don't know that I'm qualified to say the inside story. The inside obvious part is that she faced a very strong Democratic primary challenge in 2024. And figure it's December 2022, so that race has already started. Kevin McCarthy's election as Speaker is, well, I don't want to say in doubt, but it's confused. He can only lose 5 votes, and there are already 5 Republicans who've said they'll never vote for him. The most frequent question I get from journalists is, what are my anxieties about the 118th Congress? And I confess that they're relatively little. Obviously, I'd rather be in charge and help drive the agenda. That's not going to happen in the House. On the other hand, with such a slim majority, I don't see them, and Democrats controlling the Senate and Joe Biden's president, I don't see them making any progress at rolling back the significant legislation of the last couple of years. There is a very, very narrow window to raise the debt ceiling now while we still have the quote unquote power. I don't think anyone thinks that that's actually going to happen. So the debt ceiling, we're going to run into it. So the debt ceiling is the legal authority that the federal government has to borrow the funds it needs to meet the existing obligations, Social Security, Medicare payments, everything else. And once we get to that limit, the Treasury Department has some short-term tools it can use, so-called quote-unquote extraordinary measures, like they can suspend the sale of certain government securities, but they can't do that for very long. Ultimately, they're going to run out of cash, and they've got to borrow. It basically restricts the Treasury Department's ability to honor the commitments already made by Congress and by the president. So basically, we spent the money, and now we're telling them that up to a certain limit, they can pay for them, and after that, they're not allowed to pay. I'm part of the growing number of people that thinks we don't need a debt ceiling. It doesn't do anything. It's unnecessary. All it does is create a sense of crisis out there every couple of years, and much brinksmanship as people manage it up to the very last minute. The Lifeline changed from a 10-digit number to 988 in the middle of July. It was a 500,000 call increase just in the month of August as people began to understand that 988 exists. But my guess is that 80% of the American public still doesn't know. And we need to tell them, and the number of lives that we will save on that are really important. And we have 7 to 20 million, depending on what number you believe. That's the range the New York Times gives us, of people suffering from long COVID today. 2 to 3 million who aren't working because of long COVID, who are out of the workforce. And we need much, much more work to really get deeper into long COVID and to figure out not only how to prevent it, but how to bring people back from that. It's very sad to see how high our maternal mortality rate is compared to most of the other civilized countries in the world, and specifically by demographic. Black women's maternal mortality is something, 3, 4, 5 times higher than it is for white women. And we got to figure out why and what to do about it. How much of it is prenatal health care? How much has to do with other environmental factors? Telehealth has been a godsend for so many Americans. We don't want it to go away. We want to make sure that the interstate restrictions are unnecessary and needless.